Hello there and welcome to another edition of Frontline. I am Obiora Ilo. Last week we started a conversation with the Honorable Minister of National Planning, Dr. Shamsuddin Usman. But because of the election results that were coming in from Ondo State that morning, we are not able to conclude our discussion with the Honorable Minister. Today on our program, we'll be bringing you the full package of that interview with the Honorable Minister. Today also we'll be featuring the views of former FCT Minister Nasir El-Rufai. He'll be talking about growing up in northern Nigeria and commenting on some national issues of the day. This and more when we return. Chairman of the Steering Committee of Vision 2020. My guest is Dr. Shamsuddin Usman, OFR. Honorable Minister, you're welcome to our program.
Obiora, it's my great pleasure to be here.
Well, before we go deep into our discussion, we'll take a little prologue where my colleagues have tried to articulate the history of our national planning endeavors. So we'll take our prologue on the program for this morning.
Since 1946, when the colonial masters came up with a development plan for Nigeria, which was captioned 10-Year Plan of Development and Welfare for Nigeria, subsequent post-independent administrations have come up with one development plan or the other. The Tafawa Balewa government came up with the first national development plan, which was to span from 1962 to 1968. But the 1966 coup and the attendant civil war scuttled the plan, which focused on laying a sound foundation for the country's economic growth. After the civil war in 1970, the Jaragowan government, which was grappling with its reconciliation agenda, embarked on what it called the Second National Development Plan from 1970 to 1975. This plan, which ran its full course, focused on the reconstruction of the war-battered economy and the promotion of economic and social development of a new Nigeria. This period saw the construction of many federal roads and the establishment of the NYSC. With the seeming success of the second development plan, General Gowon introduced the third national development plan. The aim, among others, was to build on the gains of the second development plan by increasing the country's per capita income, unemployment reduction, diversification of the economy, and indigenization of economic activities. However, this plan, unlike the one before it, was dead on arrival as another coup in 1975 torpedoed its implementation. The Shagari government, which came to power in 1979, revisited the culture of planning when it came up with its own development agenda, which began in 1981 and was expected to elapse in 1985. Shagari's aim was to establish a solid base for the long-term economic and social development of Nigeria, but unfortunately, the coup of 1983 ended the journey abruptly. In 1998, the Babangida administration decided to go with a short-term plan with the introduction of the one-year Economic Emergency Program, Structural Adjustment Program, SAP, purportedly aimed at making the economy have foundation before any meaningful planning could be made. It followed up in 1989 with the fifth National Development Plan, the three-year rolling plan, 1989, 1990, and 1991. When the Abacha government mounted the saddle, he introduced the Vision 2010, which also was aimed at improving the country economically, reducing dependence on oil, increasing GDP, reducing unemployment, growing democracy, fighting corruption, amongst others. After the death of General Abacha, the Abdulsalami Abubakar's government adopted the vision, but when he left government in 1999, not much was realized in the much advertised goals of the vision. The second coming of Obasanjo in 1999 saw a rebaptized vision that was unveiled on the 25th of September 2009, known as Vision 2020, with an ambitious long-term development goal designed to propel the country to the league of the top 20 economies of the world by the year 2020. It had two broad objectives: to make efficient use of human and natural resources to achieve rapid economic growth and translate the economic growth into equitable social development for all citizens. Its vision statement said that by 2020, Nigeria will have a large, strong, diversified, sustainable and competitive economy economy that effectively harnesses the talents and energies of its people and responsibly exploits its natural endowments to guarantee a high standard of living and quality of life to its citizens. The specific targets of Vision 2020 include a GDP of not less than $900 billion, national per capita income of not less than $4,000 per year, and many more. In simple language, what Vision 2020 aims at is that in another 8 years, the Nigerian economy should be competing with countries like Sweden, Canada, Germany, Britain, Australia, and probably overtake others like China, Brazil, India, and Russia. Singling out Sweden, for instance, and looking at the statistics shows that Nigeria's ambition is indeed a tall order. For instance, Sweden's GDP stands at $538 billion, while Nigeria is $395.2 billion. Per capita income in Sweden is over $35,000, while Nigeria is, and over 150 million people live below 200 naira per day, or approximately 6,000 per month. In Sweden, life expectancy stands at 80.9 years, while in Nigeria, it is a scandalous 43 years. While Sweden is ranked 10 in the Human Development Index, Nigeria is 156 behind African countries like Algeria, Gabon, Egypt, Angola, and others. This wide gap between where Nigeria is today, 2012, and where Nigeria wants to be in 2020 raises many questions. Has Nigeria put in place measures that will lead to the realization of our vision, or is it just wishful thinking? While organizations like Goldman Sachs and the Fitch Rating see some hope for accelerated growth based on some specific conditions, some analysts say statistics bandied about by those organizations are only academic and rich in economic legalese. To make Nigeria one of the first 20 global economies, development experts insist some conditions must be met. Resources must be properly managed and channeled towards attainment of defined economic goals. Corruption must be reduced to the barest minimum. Unemployment must be tackled. Insecurity, poverty, power challenges, agriculture, and many other dilapidating problems must be addressed. Others say with a high mortality rate of development programs in Nigeria and unsustained previous efforts at planning and visioning, that Vision 2020 must just be a wild goose chase. However, officials of government insist that the gains made under Obasanjo Yar'Adua governments and the achievements recorded in the current transformation agenda of President Jonathan, that Vision 2020 is on course. With all these conflicting arguments, we ask, is Vision 2020 a reality or fraud?
Yeah, Honorable Minister, you heard what my colleagues and I put together as a kind of agenda for our discussion. Let me start by asking you, what is Vision 2020?
Well, Obiora, first of all, I think you are now starting on the right path, because unfortunately I've watched this analysis, background analysis that you've done, and even some of the wording that you have used. Is Vision 2020 reality or fraud? Fraud is too strong a word. I have been asked that, and the word that people have used, is it reality or myth?
Yes.
I think that's, but let me start by correcting something that I saw on that video clip, which is that the analysis you did there is completely wrong. Nobody is saying Nigeria will be better than Switzerland by 2020, because that's the way in which it was captured. You showed all sorts of, the target is simply Nigeria to be one of what is called the G20, to be among the top 20 countries by the size of its GDP. That is, those are the sort of official, I mean, the first target. Of course, in doing that, there are a lot of other changes, a lot of aspirations that have been built into the vision. But so when people say, will start taking England or wherever and say, look, we will never be able to be bigger than them, better than them. I have also had people interpret Vision 2020 to see one of the most industrialized countries, by, you know, or one of the most developed countries, or one of the top developed. No, that's the target is much simpler and easier than that. First of all, in terms of size of GDP, as at the time we were crafting this vision in 2009, if you take the GDP of all countries in the world, Nigeria was number 44 in terms of size of GDP. And our target is to be among the top 20. Now, as of today, as I'm talking to you, depending on how you measure GDP, there are two broad measures, ways in which GDP is measured. I'm not going to go into technicalities here. But depending on which measure you take, we have moved from number 44 to about number 37, or from number 37 to about number 30. So in a matter of 2-3 years, we have actually moved, whichever measure you take, about 4 or 5 steps. So clearly, in terms of that simple measure, we are making progress. And also in terms of the GDP per capita. But those are, if you like, signposts that I use. The vision encapsulates a lot more than just measures of economic activity, because GDP is just a measure, a way of measuring total economic activity.
You know, I'm not sorry to interrupt you.
Yes,
but when you say it is based on GDP, a lot of Nigerians will want to know, what does that translate to? That we are 33, because I remember that in 2009, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, looking at the growth of our economy, because you were talking about 2009, so I'm going to 2009. They said that the slow growth of our economy at that time, which was at 7%, 8%, was not going to help us achieve this aim. Has anything changed? And when you say it's just GDP, let Nigerians understand what that translates to in their way of life, in health, in education, and all that.
That's a very important point,
Yes.
and that's what I was actually coming to.
Yeah.
That the vision is certainly, even though those are the, if you like, the power, the lighthouse of guiding us towards our movement. There's a lot more to it than, for example, political development, social development, economic development, growth with jobs. Because unfortunately, some of the growth that we have achieved in recent years has been a growth that has not impacted very significantly on job creation. And a lot of programs are being designed to make sure that, and implemented, to make sure that we address that problem, issues of addressing wealth creation. People talk about poverty reduction, but more of wealth creation, creating wealth. So, and these are the things that will impact on the people. Now, coming back, what a nice coincidence that today, as we are doing this program, we're anxiously waiting for the elections in Ondo, the gubernatorial elections. And that's the first starting point. Vision 2020 envisages, even has, issues about what kind of elections Nigeria is going to have. Free and fair elections. And that is what was translated into the president's transformation agenda. Because the transformation agenda is basically for the president to say, what is going to be my contribution in these 4 or 5 years that I've been elected towards moving Nigeria closer to that, achieving that vision. And one of the key things there is having free and fair elections. And it started with the 2011 general elections that have been judged the freest and fairest that this country has ever had. And today's election, or yesterday's election in Ondo is another example, with an election going on, no interference from the federal government or anybody, trying to allow the people to express their wishes through the ballot box. This is an important achievement under both the transformation agenda as well as a key target of Vision 2020.
You know, and I want to quote your interview to the Sunday Trust very, very recently. You told the Sunday Trust that when people ask you, where is needs to, where is 7-point agenda, you tell them that they are all now swallowed by the Vision 2020 and advanced now by the transformation agenda. And I'll go back to what I asked. So what in specific, simple man's language, are we expecting by 2020?
It is not just GDP, and I think that's something also that needs to be understood.
Okay.
But I was just, if you like, putting things in context after viewing the video.
Setting the scene.
Setting the scene. It's more than just GDP. it is trying to achieve overall development. I think in a very simple language, we are talking of the total transformation of Nigeria in terms of political, social, and economic indicators, key indicators. We are talking of transformation of Nigeria in terms of especially critical infrastructure development, human development, including education, in particular education and health, and governance, emphasis on governance. So the reason, getting back to your earlier point, why you cast certain things in terms of GDP is because...
Honorable Minister, let me take you to something a Nigerian scholar published in the journal of the Asian Journal of Rural Development. That was sometime in 2011, because that goes to show how Nigerians are looking at this. He said that the vast majority of Nigerians are ill-fed, ill-clothed, ill-housed, and ill-educated. They live in the rural areas characterized by massive underdevelopment. He said poverty is the malady of Nigeria, which is involved in what he called misery go round as part of the world economy. So he said Nigeria Vision 2020 therefore is too ambitious, and against the backdrop of the antecedents of policy somersaults, that a lot of people are saying that Vision 2020 is utopian.
Well, I think first of all, the diagnostic part of his, I don't know which scholar.
Well, his name is Onyenekwe Cyprian Ene, a scholar.
Okay. I mean, there are scholars and there are scholars. And
Yes.
each person is entitled to his own interpretation.
Yes.
Of course, we have been very hard on ourselves also in terms of analyzing what the situation is. The difference, I think, is, okay, if assuming even the situation is like that, what do you need to do? We should not, Nigerians are lamenters, great lamenters. Instead of lamentation, the president always used to say that the time for lamentation is over. This is the time for action. And identifying those malaises, what then, or that malaise is probably a better way to put it. What actions do you need to take? And this is why when you take the vision, first of all, sets the direction. Mm-hmm. This is where we are aiming to go. You take the more detailed plans. They give much more detailed key programs and projects that will take us there. And then you now go to the sectoral plans. Because we didn't just do the broad plans, the medium term, but detailed sectoral plans are being done and implemented. Take the agricultural transformation agenda that the current government is pursuing, led by the Minister of Agriculture. It has very clear specific targets. We want to achieve self-sufficiency in 5 crops by 2015. Rice in particular, cassava. Look at this issue of cassava bread. So people are actually seeing the lives of people being transformed, results being achieved, and with very clear targets being set that by this time we'll do this. So the Nigerians are able to say, yes, you have achieved or you haven't achieved.
No. Honorable Minister, what Nigerians are saying is, you know, in development studies, if you're embarking on development, they're what they call milestones. And that's why I'm asking now, what are the specifics, what are the deliverables that government can point at and say, okay, we've done this, and that shows that we'll do that. Let's go to power, for instance. Not much has been achieved in power.
Oh, a lot has been achieved in power. First of all, even in terms of, look at the number of IPP plants that gradually are coming on stream. Look at the relative improvement in terms of the stability of the power, in terms of number of hours. And that's when you say there are no measures. There are very clear measures that are being put in place. Number of hours of uninterrupted power supply. Because at the end of the day, the average Nigerian is not interested in, we used to tell the story in terms of number of generating plants, kilometers of transmission line. No, we've changed the story now.
It's becoming interesting because we are, looking at specifics. Roads, for instance, will there be a vision, realization with the kinds of roads we have in Nigeria today? Transportation, the rail system is not doing as well as it should do. What specific things are government? Because your ministry is like every ministry. What specific things is government doing to ensure that roads, we are talking about agriculture, you can't have agriculture without roads, moving the food item, agricultural products into the cities and vice versa. In those areas, what have we achieved? What are the specifics that we can hold and say, Nigerians, yes, we've done well in this. In 2015 or in 2020, this is where we'll be.
What we are trying to do actually, and which we are achieving, is changing Nigerian psyche to think of transportation as a multimodal method of moving about. Not just roads. We are so focused on roads. Unfortunately, over the last 20 or more years, we've been so much focused on roads
because nothing is done. Because nothing is done in the roads.
Yes, we have allowed our railways, our waterways, and so on to go dead, more or less. But the railway system, for example, is being revived. That's why under the good governance tour that we are now undertaking all over the country, last time when the team was in Kwara, they actually rode a train, from, I think, Ilorin to Lokoja, just to show people that, and the Minister of Transport has assured me, because I said to him that for me to be convinced, the first journey I made to Lagos was from Kano to Lagos by train. And I want to be on the first train that will come back on that route. And he has promised me that either before the end of the year or early next year, this will be achieved. So I and a few other ministers will actually be on that train. So train services are coming back. Inland waterways, the dredging of the Niger has been completed. The Onitsha port has been commissioned by Mr. President. Just last Thursday, we were in Baro, Niger State, to see the Baro port, which is if you like, the northern end of the dredging of the Niger, at least for this phase. So, the whole system is being addressed. Yes, the road sector, but even that, the Minister of Works is actually busy addressing a number of key roads.
Honorable Minister, where is the Minister of Works busy? Because if you move from Enugu to Port Harcourt, the road is bad. If you move around Akwa Ibom, Cross River, the roads are bad. If you go to Delta, the roads are... So where is the minister working? These are what is agitating Nigerians. These are the things that are agitating Nigerians. You said we focus so much on roads, and still the roads are not good. Lagos to Benin is bad. So where is he working?
First of all, you must also remember that there are lots of... all those roads that you mentioned, for example, yes, work is going on them to rehabilitate them. The rainy season sometimes disrupts, in fact all the time, disrupts roadworks considerably. Now, in fact, the minister has a very detailed program to try to use this period of the dry months to make a significant impact. His target is that before Christmas, people will actually see a significant improvement on all those roads. But again, the focus is, if you take all the total number of contracts that have been awarded, this is part of what is being done now, to rationalize, to try to use resources much more efficiently. In the past, we just previous governments awarded contracts all over. If you take the total number of road contracts that have been given and take all of the federal budget, that will not even be enough to fund all of them. Okay, so it's a question of, selecting the key ones, especially the key trunk A roads
yeah,
that connect different parts of the country. Okay, and that is what the minister is
Minister, I'll come back to you. Let's take a little break and hear what Nigerians say about Vision, and hear what Nigerians are saying about Vision 2020.
Environment not conducive for them to perform, and that is why people like us who are in the private sector are worried that if they don't find a political solution to the crisis on ground, as per security, which the political class caused for this country, using religion and ethnicity to divide the people in order to make the place unsecured and unsafe for business to thrive. It's very, very pathetic. Not until we address those root causes of greed and corruption in this country, we cannot move forward. So it is a dream, being among the best, the top 20 economy of the world. That is a pipe dream. It's something that we should start, and we are not seeing it starting until we cleanse the system of corruption before we can say we are on the path to that greatness.
It's not because I don't want my country to move forward, but because it starts with you and I. It's an individual thing. I believe anything you have to do as an individual, you should do it well before you can even look up to people. So I don't think so.
If we want to build Nigeria, if we want Nigeria to even be better than what it is in 2015, 2016, before 2020, I can assure you it will be. Singapore, for example. Singapore is what it is today because someone said we're going to make it happen. Look at Dubai. It didn't happen by chance. It didn't happen. Nothing is happening. Nothing is going to happen in Nigeria by chance. We have to sit down and say we want to make it work. If you want to make it work, then you have to do something about it. Don't sit back and then think it's all about the money. No, we need to do something about Nigeria.
I don't think so. We have a long way to go. With the way things are going on in our society, it is very obvious that we cannot achieve to be among the great nations in 8 years. We have a lot of things to take care in Nigeria. Things are not, the leadership is not going very well. So we have a lot of things to take care of. So there's no way we can be among the top nations in 8 years. It's not possible. That's the truth about it. I want to be very frank, and I'm speaking the bottom of my mind. So I don't want to mince words, but I'm being frank to you that we cannot make it in 8 years.
Well, Honorable Minister, those are Nigerians speaking. Well, we don't have too much time. So let me ask you, corruption, that's a big challenge, and a lot of Nigerians are worried about it. And then security. How can we get it right in these two areas?
Well, first of all, thank you for those, again, Nigerians that you got to speak. And I sympathize with them. Clearly, what we have identified there is, as a government, generally, and even in national planning, we need to communicate much better with Nigerians. But I think all of them actually captured the elements of the solution, which is leadership and commitment. I like the guy who said, look at Singapore. It didn't happen by accident. Malaysia did not happen by accident. China did not happen by accident. India didn't happen by accident. It was a leadership that had a vision, that was committed to that vision and pursued it rigorously and vigorously until they achieved it. Unfortunately, in this country, from your earlier clips also, we have had so many visions and plans aborted by military and lack of leadership continuity. The difference now is that we're having a commitment by the leadership. Mr. President is committed to this vision, is committed to the transformation agenda, and the continuity in policy. He didn't come in, this was, in fact, Vision 2020 started from Obasanjo's time. Eradua didn't throw it out of the window. President Jonathan didn't throw it out of the window. They are building on the foundations that they met. And that is what made a difference in those countries that succeeded. First of all, you need to have a vision, because even as an individual, if you are visionless, then you are planning to fail. Or not having plans is planning to fail. So, yes, the target, when people say it's too ambitious, what I say to them simple is, okay, if we are not consistently pursuing this, supposing by 2020 we are not number 20, if we end up the way we are moving now, I told you, we moved 5 steps up in just 3 years. If we continue like that, supposing we end up number 25, is that not a better position for Nigeria than to have not tried at all to not have the inspiration and the push and the programs and the projects, and then end up 2020 would have been number 50 in the world.
Dr. Tive Ibuzo is a civil society person who said that Vision 2020 is an attempt by the Nigerian ruling class to hoodwink and deceive the people into believing that the state is striving to make Nigeria to become one of the 20 largest economies in the world. And I want to ask you, you've come with performance contract for MDAs, ministries, departments, and you've been in public service for a long time. A lot of Nigerians can count on you. Can you look me in the eye and say that you and your colleagues in government are really determined to see through Vision 2020? That the president has the resolve and his lieutenants have the resolve, and that they're not deceiving Nigerians?
I think the question of deceit is completely out of the question.
Okay.
There is no deceit about. In fact, the whole essence of the whole performance measurement is transparency and accountability, because we will be producing regular reports. First, we have set targets, and these targets will be made public, and at the point of measurement, we will make them public. For example, you see, sometimes, unfortunately, it is the old part, Nigerian psyche, the distrust of government is been so deep, and that is what we are trying to actually address. There has been such a deep-rooted distrust that even when things are changing, people do not appreciate it.
That was the Honorable Minister of National Planning, Dr. Shamsuddin Usman, talking about the feasibility of Vision 2020. And to provide some insight into the challenges of that vision, I sat down with Dr. Otive Ibuzo, who I asked if he thought that government was sincere in its pursuit of the objectives of Vision 2020.
If you look at the pattern of growth in the economy in the last 20 years, you will discover that between 1990 and 2000, the growth rate was between 2 and 3%. But between 2000 and 2010, the growth rate has increased to, it has more than doubled to between 6 to 8%. And the vision is anchored on a double-digit growth rate. From when it was formulated around 2008 or 2007 till 2020. But that is one of the inconsistencies in the vision itself, because the vision document indicated that from all economic projections, from IMF, World Bank, and others, that Nigeria is unlikely to achieve that double-digit growth rate. So, from all indication, it is practically impossible, because even in the last few years, our growth rate has not been double-digit. And so, from the assumptions, it's not possible for us to reach that level. You know, when the vision was first formulated during the Obasanjo regime, we argued that the government had no intention, no strategy, no execution capacity to make Nigeria to become one of the top 20 economies by 2020. But with the Yar'Adua administration, a strategy was put in place, which we have today now as the Vision 2020 strategy. And if you look at that strategy, there are positive aspects of it, like sectoral planning, integrated planning, performance management, monitoring and evaluation, which are positive aspects. But there are also some negative aspects, one of which we have talked about, unrealistic assumptions, and the fact that, you know, the vision can be achieved and poverty will still be lacked. So if you look at it, a review, an assessment of the Vision 2020, you will say there is a half-hearted attempt, to implement the vision. For instance, the vision states that every ministry, department, and agency should have a strategy which is aligned to the vision. Not just that, that every level of government, the federal, every state government, and every local government will have its own strategy aligned with the vision. And not just that, that every department, ministry, and agency, and every level of government will have a monitoring and evaluation framework. But after so many years, not many of these institutions have put in place these approaches. And we have always emphasized that strategy is very important for the success of any nation or organization. So we can say that, yes, in some aspects, like recently the president has brought about performance managed performance contract, which is a component of the Vision 2020. There's a half-hearted approach to implement, but not very holistic, and the execution capacity is not really strong enough.
Finally, they say it's becoming the largest economy in terms of GDP growth. How does this translate to a good life for the ordinary Nigerian?
In fact, the United Nations in 2010 made a publication of UND report which talked about pathways for development. And they made it clear what countries should do in order for their growth or for the developmental effort to have impact on the life of the people. And what they stated was very clear. First, any government that wants to develop and have the citizens benefit must focus on 4 key areas: education, health, infrastructure, and agriculture. They also mentioned that policies and institutions are actually more important than the level of economic growth. And they showed clearly that countries like Cuba, Costa Rica, the Indian state of Kerala, and Sri Lanka, that the citizens of those countries have standard of living that is better than other countries at the same level of economy. So what is important for the citizens of a country is the kind of policy that are implemented, the kind of institutions, and whether the growth is inclusive or exclusive. But the challenge with the Nigerian economy is that it's a conclave economy dependent essentially on oil, and only a few people benefit from it. That's why, even if you can look from the period of the implementation of the Vision 2020, in 2004, the statistics show that the level of people living in poverty in Nigeria was 54.4%. These official statistics from the National Bureau of Statistics. But by 2010, 6 years later, when the economic growth rate was about 7%, higher than the previous decade, what we saw was that poverty increased from 54.4% to 69%. So yes, it's even possible, even if it is possible, for Nigeria to become one of the largest economies by 2020, unless the priorities of government change to focus on this investment, to focus investment in sectors that affect the life of citizens, unless the policies change, unless the institutions change to become inclusive, to have, special target on the poor, to have policies, because from policy science today, we can know when you bring a policy who will benefit, whether the rich, the middle class or the poor. And so my advice really is that as government tries to implement the Vision 2020, it must put in place mechanisms, institutions, policies, and programs that will benefit the poor. Because if you have a country where 69% of the citizens live below poverty line, then all your policies should be suited to benefiting the poor. From policy science, we know clearly what policies benefit poor people and what policies benefit the rich.
We'll take a break. When we return, in your own words, with Nasir El-Rufai.
I've been trained to lead, but I never saw myself in the context of being a public leader. I saw myself as an academic at best. I was hoping that I would be a university lecturer or a professional in the private sector. I never in my life ever thought I would work for the government. We were poor. My father was a pensioner. He was earning £3 a month as his pension. And we all had to help out in the farm. But everybody was poor then. There were a few people that were a little better off. So there wasn't much inequality. Growing up was difficult. When our father was alive, we used to walk 3 kilometers every day to the nearest primary school with my elder brother Bashir. That's how we got an education. In my second year of primary school, he died. And before he died, he said to me that you must take your education seriously. It's the key to your success in life. I remember that very clearly. And a few hours later, he died. So for me, that was something that was front and center all my life, to remember what my father said. So he was loving, he encouraged all of us. He had a large family, 3 wives, 15 children. But we all saw the burden on him. He was struggling all the time, but he took care of everyone. And my mother, a very kind woman, she's still alive and around and kicking. She's nearly 80 now. Was instrumental in shaping many of my ideas about life. Said the biggest challenges were 2 or 3. The first was that privatization was almost a forgotten concept by the time I was appointed. Because the last time anything was privatized was 1992. Once Babangida stepped aside, privatization was frozen. Okay? So it was my duty to re-energize the program, to restaff the BPE, and to convince people that privatization was not just the transfer of assets from the government to the hands of a few, but something of benefit to all Nigerians. So I spent a lot of time explaining and so on and so forth. So that was a challenge, which I think we executed, we handled fairly well. The second challenge was the fact that the ministers, the politicians, the bureaucrats were against privatization because they would lose power. You know, these parastatals were gold mines for many. Of course, the Siemens scandal revealed what ministers of communication were doing in Niger. Okay? And it's the same everywhere. If you go to Nepal, you will see the ministers of power dabbling into their finances and doing all kinds of stuff. If you go to Nigeria Airways, you see the ministers of aviation giving free tickets. So when you say you want to take these enterprises and make them private, the ministers will have no influence. The directors, the permanent secretaries will not be able to send notes. It's a big battle. I spent most of my time fighting those battles, which I think I did fairly well because I didn't care to be the DG of BP. I could walk anytime, so no minister was able to intimidate me. I fought everyone. And we quarreled with Obasanjo many times. So Oba came Achukwe, for instance, who he took sides with on Nigeria Airways. And of course, today Nigeria Airways is dead. Okay, so that was the second challenge. The third challenge are the transactions themselves and the feeling that, everything that was sold, went to a big man, or Atiku bought everything and so on. And this suspicion permeated the government. The number of times Obasanjo called me to say, okay, yeah, I know you sold this company to X, but who is the man really behind it? And I'll tell him that this is what I know, and I was open because I had no interest. I just wanted to see these companies move from government ownership where they were not working to private ownership where there was a chance they would work. And at the end of my tenure, we had privatized 22 companies or something, and all of them but one are doing well. Okay? When I was DG of BP, every company sold was advertised. Those that express interest are shortlisted, evaluated. The bids are open in public, on live television, and the highest bid wins. As far as I know, Atiku did not buy any company. The only company that there was suspicion that Atiku may be associated with was AP, African Petroleum, which was bought by Sadiq Petroleum, Peter Okocha, who is a friend of Atiku's. Okay, now, the rules of privatization did not say that the friends of those in power should not buy. Okay? The rules disqualified staff of BPE and members of council from buying. It did not even stop the president from buying. Okay? Because he was not a member of council. But it disqualified members of council. The president is only disqualified from buying by the code of conduct requirements in the constitution. Okay? I used to buy a lot of shares on the stock exchange. The moment I became appointed head of BP, I stopped. Even shares other than privatized companies, we have code of ethics. We disqualified ourselves. We imposed that on ourselves. We disqualified every staff of BP from buying shares in any company being privatized. But as DG, I went further. I did not buy a single share on the stock exchange from 1999 till 2003. Go and check. Why? Because as DG of BP, if I bought shares in any company, it may send a message to the market that maybe companies being privatized in that sector, there was something. Or if I sell my shares, it will send a message. So I did not, apart from my salary and benefits, I did not benefit in any way from being head of BP. Yes, Senator Ibrahim Mantu and Jonathan Zingina were the ones that asked me to pay them to ease my clearance at the Senate. And I came out and said so. No, I wasn't playing to the gallery, but I just thought that this country's democracy will never improve unless those that don't fit are exposed. I cannot get Mantu and Zingina arrested, but I could name and shame them. I would deny because nobody gets witnesses when asking for a bribe. But I was hoping that one of them would have the guts to sue me for libel because I have circumstantial evidence to show that they did. But you see, for me, what was very important was I saved future nominees from being asked. No ambassador that year was asked for money. And all other nominees thereafter, nobody asked them for money. But this thing was becoming a practice because two of my colleagues as ministers, who are both now governors, by the way, admitted to me that they were asked to pay, and one of them admitted to me that he had to pay. BPE was an honest institution. Nobody in my time was doing that stuff. When Charles Osuji went to Mike Adenuga and collected 25 million and brought it, came to me and told me, I told him return his money to him. And I'll leave this matter because Charles was one of my good staff. I said, go and return, let this be between us. I know what you are trying to do. You are thinking of my best interest. This is Nigeria. He gave a long speech about nobody will look after you, sir. You work very hard here, you don't have anything. I said, before I came here, did you know how I was feeding my family? Who asked you to do that? I said, Charles, go and return the money and I will forget you've told me this. He did it. He came back to me a second time with $100,000. He said it is in the trunk of his car. I should go and just pick it. He went back to my Kadenuga. I said, Charles, you are not listening. If you don't do what I've told you, I'm going to have to get you disciplined. He came back at that time and said, Atiku Abubakar knows about this, that Mike Adenuga told Atiku Abubakar. So I went, I said, okay, fine. I went and confronted Atiku. I said, you guys are telling us you are fighting corruption, where we should do things straight, and now this is what I've had. Atiku called Mike Adenuga and put him on speakerphone. I said, Mike, what did I tell you about Nasir? He said, you said I should not try to see him or give him anything. Atiku, so why did you? I'm sorry, sir. I just wanted to thank him. This is what happened. So Atiku said, I said, sir, we have to fire this guy. But he's a deputy director. I cannot fire him as DG. I have to bring it to the council. Atiku said, bring me the memo. We'll terminate his appointment right away. No. But because he broke the law, and that is the problem of this country. We mix sentiments with legality, and we'll never make progress unless we recognize that a society must have rules, and when these rules are broken, the justice should be blind. Whether you are rich or poor, whether you're big or small, the sanctions that are necessary to correct the wrongdoing are applied. That's what I did in FCT. People are telling me that, because someone is poor and he put up an illegal structure, I shouldn't take it down. So it is okay to bring down the house of a senator or inspector general of police or a minister, because I did that too. I brought down the house of the chairman of the ruling party because it was on water line. They have two wrongs don't make a right, okay? The fact that the official was wrong and gave you a location and you built a house that threatens public safety doesn't mean it shouldn't go down. Before you qualify for compensation in FCT, you must have CFO. You must have approved building plans, okay? Those that had those documents were paid. Ahmadu Ali was paid 20 million compensation for his house because he had proper CFO, his building plans were approved, but he built it on water line under the Federal Capital Territory Act 1976, Land Use Act 1978. If you don't have title to land, whether you're rich or poor, you are breaking the law. And I have no sympathy, no apology for dealing with someone that breaks the law. As I said, this is the problem of this country. When the law is broken, sentiments kick in. And we'll never make progress unless we recognize that those that have responsibility for implementing the law must do so blindly. If there is something wrong with the law, go and change it. Those people that claim that before we came, you are allowed to build anywhere should go to the National Assembly and pass a law legalizing what they have done. Then I cannot do anything about it. But as executive, my job is to implement the law that is on the ground. And the law on the ground is the Federal Capital Territory Act, Section 7 and 14, and the Land Use Act. And that's what I did. The moment you see Nigeria as one, you don't have any difficulty searching for the best people from all over Nigeria to help you get your job done. This is what I did in BPE. This is what I did in FCT, okay? And the moment you search all across Nigeria looking for the best and the brightest for any particular job, two things will happen. You will find that most of them are not from the same area you come from, most of the best people. And you find that more than half of them are women. Okay? In the FCT, the most difficult assignments I had were handled by women because they work harder, they were more focused, and they were more honest. You know? So this is some of the things. And one of the closest human beings to me today is Obi Ezekwesili.
And she's a woman.
An Igbo girl from Anambra State. Eradua and I knew each other back in the 70s because Eradua went to Baria College for his A-levels. And the man I told you was my mentor, Sani Mekudi, was Eradua's cousin. He introduced me to Eradua while Eradua was a student in Ahmadu Bello University, and we've remained in contact all these years. So Eradua is like a senior elder brother. But what I've been told from those close to him in those days was that a marabout told him that somebody whose name starts with N was going to contest for president in 2011, and he concluded it was me. That's why he came after me. The N was Nuhu Ribadu. His marabout didn't give him the complete information. But I don't know what's the problem with Goodluck Jonathan. I guess perhaps because I came back from exile and decided I was done with PDP, and I went my own way. And you know, I have this intimidating profile in the eyes of politicians. They think I'm up to something. You know, maybe because of the positions I've held and the visibility I enjoyed under Obasanjo, they think that there is something. So I was someone that had to be destroyed. So Jonathan also went after me, after Yaradua. And Jonathan is my friend. You know, we were friends from the time he was deputy governor. But for some inexplicable reason that I still don't know, he went after me.
That was in your own words with Nasir El-Rufai talking about growing up in northern Nigeria and talking about his experiences at the BPE and as Federal Capital Territory Minister. Well, before we go our parting shot, just in the passing week, we heard the story of that plane crash that involved the governor of Taraba State. And I'm asking, is the social media doing the job of the main line media? Because on that day, what we heard was the governor is dead. Later on, we heard the governor survived. Are the conventional pressmen trying to beat deadlines with the social media? That's the question we journalists have to answer. And that's our package for today. I'm Obiora Ilo. Join us again, same time next week.